Have you ever felt that overnight, everything in your life began to crumble? Relationships fall apart, opportunities close, people move away. It seems that the universe is conspiring against you. But what if I told you that this can be a test? A sign that something much bigger is about to happen. Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists in history, believed that life's challenges are not mere coincidences. He found that moments of crisis can actually be hidden messages from the universe, signs that you are undergoing a process of deep transformation. But the question is, can you recognize these signs, or keep resisting something you are trying to guide you to a new path? If you feel that lately everything has been more difficult, that the people around you no longer understand you, that certain situations seem to be repeated without explanation, pay attention. The universe may be trying to teach you something essential for your evolution, and if you ignore, you can end up trapped in the same standards, unable to see the true opportunity behind chaos. Have you noticed that before a big change in life, there is always a period of confusion, doubts, and even pain? What seemed right begins to collapse. You feel that you are being pushed to an unknown path, without control, unanswered. But is this really a punishment? Or is this feeling of loss and discomfort part of a much deeper process? Jung said that so that we can become who we really are, we need to go through a phase of rupture. The old identity must die so that the true self can emerge. This means that when you feel that the universe is testing you, it may actually be preparing you. But few understand this process. Few can cross this phase without resistance. And here is the great secret. Those who understand this test and learn to see the signs can make a gigantic leap in their evolution. They understand that the challenges are just steps to something bigger. But those who resist, who try to cling to what no longer serves, end up trapped in cycles of pain and frustration. Now, I want you to think about your own life. Have you ever felt that everything was against you, but then you realized that it led you to something better? Have you ever lost something important just to understand that it was necessary for your transformation? If the answer is yes, know that this was not a chance. The universe has mysterious ways to guide us to our true path, and that is exactly what we will explore in this video. Let's understand, through the teachings of Carl Jung, why these moments of turbulence happen, how to identify if you are being tested by the universe, and, more importantly, how to go through this test in the best way possible. Because believe me, if you got here, it was no coincidence. Something very important is about to be revealed. But before we continued, I want to know about you. Have you been through a moment when everything seemed to be against you, but then you realized that it was necessary for your growth? If so, share your experience in the comments. Your report can help other people who are going through the same process now. And if this content is already making sense to you, don't forget to leave a like. It helps this video reach more people who also need this message. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so as not to lose the next content about spirituality, self-knowledge, and the mysteries of the universe. Now get ready, because we will deepen this theme and reveal how Carl Jung explained this phenomenon, and most importantly, how you can use these challenges to your advantage to make a leap in your evolution. If you feel that lately everything is out of control, that your life seems to collapse slowly, that doors that once seemed open now close without explanation, you are not alone. Many people go through this feeling of emptiness, confusion, and uncertainty. It seems that no matter how much they try, nothing works out. Relationships collapse, opportunities disappear, energy runs out, and all that is left is a deep sense of loss and frustration. But what if I told you that this is not a punishment, that this phase of challenges can be the beginning of something much bigger? Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists in history, identified that moments like this are part of a deep process of transformation. He called it individuation, the way to discover his true essence. According to Jung, when a person is about to evolve, his psyche enters a state of restructuring, and this can manifest externally as chaos. Have you noticed that when a tree needs to grow first, it loses its leaves? That before a butterfly fly, it needs to go through a period of total lament in the cocoon? Nature gives us clues that growth is not always comfortable, and often the pain you feel now can be a sign that you are about to become a stronger and more connected version of yourself. The problem is that in the midst of chaos, few people can see this process. When it all starts to crumble, the most common instinct is to despair, resist changes, and try to cling to what is leaving. But wouldn't it be easier to allow to flow? Jung said that what you resist persists. That is, the more you fight these changes, the more intense suffering becomes. Often this phase of crisis arises when you're about to jump into your evolution. But for this to happen, the universe needs to eliminate everything that no longer makes sense to you. It may be a job that no longer reflects your true purpose, a relationship that is no longer aligned with your growth, friendships that drain your energy, or even thinking patterns that need to be broken. This can be painful because, even if something is no longer doing you good, there is an emotional attachment, a fear of the unknown, an insecurity about what comes next. But what if what comes after exactly what you always wanted? The problem is that many people can't see this possibility because they are stuck in fear. And it is at this moment that the universe puts the challenges in its way, not to punish you, but to awaken you. Have you ever had the feeling that certain difficulties are repeated in your life? That you always end up facing the same challenges, whether in relationships, financial life, or your own personal growth? This is because, according to Jung, when we do not learn a lesson, it returns in a cycle, until finally we can understand and transform this pattern. Think about it. If you keep attracting the same types of people, living the same problems, feeling the same frustration, it can be a sign that there is something that needs to be worked within you. The universe does not want to see you stuck in these cycles. He wants you to evolve, but for this, it takes courage to face these issues head-on. And here is the most important point. Difficulties are not random, they are signs. They are the test that the universe puts before you to see if you are ready to go to the next level. And this test can manifest in many ways. It can be a financial crisis that forces you to change your perspective on money. It can be a relationship ending that forces you to look inside and perceive your own emotional dependence. It can be a period of loneliness that leads you to discover your true essence without external distractions. The problem is that most people face these challenges as a punishment, as a sign that something is wrong, when in fact it can be exactly the opposite. Maybe the universe is telling you you're ready to grow, but you need to leave behind everything that no longer makes sense. And now, I want you to reflect on your life. Are you going through something like this right now? Is there any challenge that has been recurring on your journey? Perhaps the universe is trying to show you something you haven't realized yet. And if that's the case, this may be the perfect time for you to start seeing this situation with other eyes. But how to know if what you are living now is really a universe test and not just a difficult phase? How to differentiate a challenge that is preparing you for something larger from a common everyday problem? Carl Jung gives us some clues to identify when we are in the midst of a true process of transformation. And in the next moments of this video, I will reveal you how to recognize these signs and, more importantly, how to go through this test without falling into the same standards of the past. And before we go to this revelation, I want to know about you. Do you feel you are living this test now? Have you ever been through a moment where everything seemed to go wrong, but then you realized that this was a turning point? Share your experience in the comments. Write the phrase, "I'm ready to evolve," if you feel that the universe is trying to teach you something right now. If this content is making sense to you, be sure to leave the like and subscribe to the channel. Not only does this help this video reach more people who also need this message, but also strengthens our community. Together, we can transform these moments of crisis into growth opportunities. Now, continue with me, because we will explore the hidden signs that indicate that you are going through a universe test and how to use this knowledge to completely transform your life. What you will find out can change the way you face challenges forever. Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists in history, has spent decades studying the mysteries of the human mind, the patterns of the unconscious, and the deep processes of inner transformation. He realized that many people face moments of crisis that seem inexplicable, periods of confusion where everything seems to crumble, but in fact, they are part of a much larger process. According to Jung, these difficult phases are not mere coincidences. They are signs that you are being called to a higher level of consciousness. He has called this phenomenon of individuation, which is nothing less than the process of becoming who you really are. But for that, something needs to happen first, the deconstruction of your old self. This means that everything that is no longer part of its essence needs to be left behind. It can be a cycle of repetitive patterns. It can be a job that no longer fills you. It can be a relationship that prevents its evolution, or even beliefs and habits that no longer correspond to its true identity. And that's exactly when many people feel lost. Suddenly, everything that seemed safe begins to disappear. The universe seems to be pulling from you what, until then, was part of your life. But what if, instead of punishment, is that an invitation to transformation? Carl Jung has identified that these moments of rupture are necessary so that we can break free from what is no longer authentic. He said that suffering arises because we resisted change, because we tried to cling to something that is no longer part of who we are becoming. And when the universe realizes that we are not ready to release on our own, it forces us to let go. You may be living just that now. It may be that certain people are coming out of your life, that old dreams no longer make sense, then a feeling of emptiness has taken over you. And what Jung teaches us is that this void is not a problem. It is actually the space necessary for the new to arise. But for this to happen, you need to learn to look inside, because the real problem is not what is happening outside, but what happens within you when these changes begin to occur. Do you feel afraid? Resist? Ask yourself why everything is happening at the same time, or can you see this as an opportunity to rebuild yourself more aligned with your true purpose? Jung claimed that the journey of individuation requires courage. It is a process where you need to face your shadows, what is hidden in your unconscious, and that you may have avoided looking for a long time. This is a period where you confront your limiting beliefs, your insecurities, your automatic standards. Because, so that we can evolve, we need to understand what holds us. And here is something fundamental that Jung has discovered. What you avoid facing control your life. This means that as long as you do not face the challenges that the universe puts before you, they will continue to emerge repeatedly in different forms, different people, but with the same energy, different situations, but with the same pattern, because your soul is trying to show you something. The universe is trying to teach you a lesson you have not yet understood. But there is good news. Just as Jung has shown us that these challenges are inevitable, he also taught us that there is a way to pass them more consciously, wiser, without having to suffer so much. And this path begins with self-perception. When you get your reactions to challenges, when you begin to notice the patterns that repeat yourself in your life, you begin to have the power to choose a different way. And here is something powerful. The universe always gives us signs. He never puts us in a situation without first trying to warn us. Small, troublesome, strange sensations, intuitions that come out of nowhere. All this are messages, but most people ignore. They only realize what is happening when they are already in the middle of the storm. Jung talked a lot about the power of the unconscious and how he tries to communicate with us all the time. through dreams, through synchronicities, through the small events of everyday life. But we live so busy, so distracted, that we rarely pay attention. And what happens when we don't hear the subtle signs? The universe needs to speak louder. And it is at this moment that we often feel that we are being tested. But what sets people apart who can cross this process more smoothly from those who suffer intensely? The answer is simple. Those who understand the process and accept transformation grow. Those who resist suffer, because suffering is not in the change in itself, but in the fight against it. Now imagine if you could look at what is happening in your life with this perspective. If, instead of seeing challenges as something negative, you see them as an invitation to become a stronger, more conscious, more connected with your true essence. Jung said that no one becomes illuminated by imagining figures of light, but by making darkness conscious. That is, to evolve, it is not enough to seek only the positive side of life. You need to face the deepest parts of yourself, those that you may be afraid to look at. The moments of crisis are opportunities for this, because it is when we are vulnerable that we can access truths about ourselves that in times of stability would be hidden. And that explains why many people only find their true purpose after going through great challenges. It is in these moments that masks fall, that the illusions fall apart, that we are face to face with who we really are. This is why the universe tests us, not to destroy us, but to reveal to us our true essence. And if you feel you're going through this test now, if you feel that your life is in a turmoil of changes, I want you to know that it has a purpose. Nothing is happening by chance. Nothing is out of place. And if you learn to see this process with the right eyes, you can completely transform your reality. But for that, first you need to learn to recognize the signs. You need to understand the hidden messages that the universe is sending you. And in the next moments of this video, I will show you how to identify these messages, how to know if you are really being tested by the universe, and most importantly, how to go through this test the right way so you finally get out of this stronger, more conscious and ready level of your journey. Now, before we continue, I want you to reflect on something. Do you feel that the universe has given you signs before, but you haven't noticed? Have you ever been through moments where, after all, did you finally understand why that difficulty? Write in the comments, I recognize the signs, if you feel that you are starting to see this new perspective. Now continue with me, because what I'm going to reveal next may be the missing piece for you to finally understand what is happening to you right now. And once you see it, it will be nothing more like before. What seems like chaos in your life can actually be a growth process. And I know that in the middle of the storm, this idea may seem impossible to accept. When everything crumbles around you, when doors close, when relationships break up and you feel aimless, it's hard to believe that all this has a purpose. But what if I told you that the universe is not against you? That, in fact, is he preparing you for something much bigger. Carl Jung believed that we have experienced moments of crisis to free ourselves from the false identities we created throughout our lives. Masks we use to fit, beliefs that have been imposed on us, standards we follow without question. But there comes a time when our true self can no longer be ignored. It is when the universe intervenes and begins to dismantle everything that no longer makes sense to its growth. This is the call to individuation, the process of awakening to who you really are. And this process is not always kind. He leads us to confront our greatest fears, to face our shadows, to release the control. Because so that the new can enter, the old man must leave. The problem is that when this happens, the first reaction of most people is to resist. They cling to what is crumbling, try to force things to go back to what they were before, fight against the changes. And that's where suffering intensifies. Suffering does not come from the change in itself, but from the resistance to change. The more you try to hold on what the universe is trying to take, the more painful the process becomes. But when you understand what is happening, When you realize that this crisis is an invitation to transformation, you start to look at everything with other eyes. Jung said that what we deny controls us, and what we accept transforms us. This means that if you are going through a difficult phase now, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" perhaps the right question is, "What is this situation trying to teach me?" Because everything in life has a meaning. Nothing happens by chance. The universe communicates through signs, patterns, challenges, and when he wants to take you to a new path, but you don't realize the subtle signs, it begins to increase the intensity until you have no choice but to wake up. Have you ever wondered how some difficulties seem to be repeated in your life, as if they were tests that you can never overcome completely? Relationships that end the same way, financial problems that do they appear repeatedly, frustrations that insist on returning. This is because you have not yet learned the lesson that these situations are trying to teach you. The universe does not work with punishment, but with evolution. He doesn't want to make you suffer. He wants to make you grow. But growth requires awareness. If you keep living the same patterns, it is because you are still unconscious about something. You haven't seen what you need to change yet. He has not yet released what needs to be left behind. And that is why the crisis intensifies. Not because you are being punished, but because you are being called. Called to a deeper level of self-knowledge. Called to see beyond the surface, called to stop blaming the outside world and start looking inside. Because the truth is that it all starts inside you. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your emotions, all creates the reality you experience. And Jung talked a lot about it. He said that the unconscious shapes our lives without us realizing it. That is, if there is something that is repeated in your life, it means that there is an unconscious pattern that needs to be transformed. And here is something powerful. The more you resist what you need to be changed, the stronger the universe needs to be to awaken you. So, what now seems like absolute chaos can actually be the greatest gift you have ever received. Imagine that you are holding a close glass. You may continue to use this glass for a while, but sooner or later it will completely crack and break in your hands. The universe sees these cracks before you. He knows it is no use continuing to insist on something that is already worn out. And so he acts. He takes this glass out of his hand, sometimes suddenly, because he knows that if you keep holding, 1 hour will really get hurt. But what do most people do? They cry through the broken glass without realizing that they are now free to receive a new, stronger, more beautiful glass, more suitable for them. This is how the universe works. It removes what no longer serves to make room for something better. But to see this, you need to be willing to trust the process. And I know that trusting the unknown is not easy. The fear of the uncertainty can be paralyzing, but the only way to get out of this cycle is to understand that change is inevitable. You can resist and suffer, or you can accept and grow. And that's why right now, I want to invite you to reflect. Are you holding something that should have already released? Are you insisting on a path that has already shown that it is not for you? Is there anything in your life that is crumbling and you haven't accepted that it may be better that way? Because everything that is happening now in your life is trying to show you something. It's trying to take you to a path that makes the most sense to who you really are. The universe is not mistaken. He doesn't make a mistake. He knows exactly where you need to go. But are you listening? Are you ready to see what is behind this apparent chaos? Now, I want you to think of your life and answer me in the comments. Do you feel that you are going through a transformation process? Do you feel that the universe is trying to teach you something right now? If so, write in the comments. I trust the process. So continue with me, because in the next few moments we will further explore this process and reveal the clear signs that the universe is testing you and how you can turn this phase into a trampoline for its evolution. Are you ready for this revelation? So let's go ahead. Have you realized that before the biggest changes in your life, have you been through periods of confusion, pain, and even loneliness? Perhaps you have felt that everything was undoing around you, as if nothing else made sense. People began to walk away for no apparent reason. Opportunities that seemed right simply disappeared, and suddenly that feeling of being lost took over you. If you've been through this, or you're going through now, know that this is not a chance. There is a purpose behind everything. Carl Jung taught us that the unconscious rules our lives in a quiet way. Often we cling to situations, relationships, and paths that are not aligned with our true essence. But as we are not aware of this yet, we continue to insist on something that should have already been left behind. And it is at this moment that the universe intervenes. He begins to move us away from everything that is no longer in harmony with our evolution. The problem is that without understanding this process, the first reaction we have is of resistance. We are afraid, we wondered, we seek answers that seem not to come. But what happens if instead of fighting it, we start seeing this period as a moment of realignment? Maybe right now the universe just be moving you away from certain people because they no longer contribute to your growth. Perhaps that job that seemed so safe was taken from you because it no longer made sense within your life purpose. Perhaps that relationship that worked out has come to an end because she was no longer allowing you to grow. And in this process, fear may arise. After all, we were taught to seek stability, to avoid changes, and to cling to what we already know. But what if true stability is to trust the flow of life? Jung said that until the unconscious becomes conscious, he will direct his life, and you will call him destination. That is, until you realize the hidden patterns that govern your life, you will continue to live the same challenges, repeating the same stories, and wondering why everything seems to be out of your control. But the truth is that you have never been without control. What happens is that the universe gives you chances of awakening, seeing beyond the surface, leaving the autopilot and taking over the reins of your own way. And when you resist this call, the universe finds ways to force you to see. Think of a moment of your life when you have experienced great difficulty. It may have been a painful end, a phase of financial instability, a time when you felt completely alone. Now look back and see what happened after that. Was that experience actually a catalyst for a transformation? If it had not happened, would you be where it is now? The universe has mysterious ways to guide us. Sometimes he puts obstacles in our way not to punish us, but to protect us from something we can't see at that moment. How many times have you insisted on something that was not meant to be, just to realize later that it would have taken you to a wrong way? The problem is that at the time of pain, we can't see it. We are trapped in the sense of loss, the fear of the unknown, the anguish of uncertainty. But if you change your perspective and begin to understand that every loss is actually a liberation, then it all starts to make sense. If you feel you are going through a difficult time now, do an exercise. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What can I learn from it? What is this situation trying to show me? Is there anything I need to let go? Is there anything inside me that I have been ignoring and is now surfaced?" Because it is often not the external world that is crumbling. It is just the illusion of control that we are losing. The universe is trying to show you a new path, but you need to be willing to see. And here comes a fundamental point that Jung has taught us. The patterns of your life do not lie. Everything that happens around you is a reflection of what happens within you. If you are still facing the same challenges, if the same situations are repeated, if you feel you are stuck in cycles you can't break, then it's time to look inside, because the universe is showing you something you haven't realized yet. Have you ever noticed that some people always seem to attract the same kind of relationship? What others face financial difficulties repeatedly? That some can never feel completely happy regardless of what they achieve? This does not happen by chance. They are unconscious patterns that continue to manifest until the person becomes aware of them and chooses to act differently. And the most impressive is that when you finally realize what you need to change, external circumstances also begin to change. When you let go of what needs to be released, the universe rewards you with new opportunities. When you stop insisting on what no longer makes sense, new paths open. But for that, you need to trust. You need to allow yourself. You need to accept that pain is part of the process and that it is only unbearable when you try to fight it. Imagine you are holding a rope. The more you pull her, the more she hurts her hands. But the moment you let out, relief comes instantly. Such is the changes that the universe tries to impose us. When we resist, we suffered. When we accept, we free ourselves. But accepting does not mean giving up. Accepting it means understanding that there is a natural flow to everything, and that when we try to swim against the current, we wear ourselves. But when we trust and follow the flow, we get where we should be much easier. Now think about your life and watch the signs. Is there anything the universe has been trying to show you for some time? Is there a pattern that is repeated and that you have not yet been able to break? Do you feel that certain doors are closing, but you still can't understand why? If these questions resonate with you, maybe it's time to change your perspective. And to help you fix this idea, I want you to write in the comments, "I recognize the signs." Write this phrase if you feel that the universe has been trying to show you something, and now you are starting to see more clearly. Share your experience, your story, because you can have someone here in the comments going through the same process, and your words can be exactly what you need to move on. Imagine that you are walking through a dense forest and suddenly realizes that you can no longer see the way in front of you. You feel lost, surrounded by giant trees, not knowing where to go. All you want is to find a way out, but each step seems to take you deeper into this green maze. Fear takes over. Anxiety grows. But then, in the midst of this despair, you remember something important: the stars. You look up and realize that even in the middle of chaos, the sky is still there. The stars continue to shine, guiding their way, even if for a moment you have forgotten that they existed. Now stop a moment and think, how many times in your life have you felt that way? Lost without direction, as if walking in circles without knowing what is the next step. And how many times have you forgotten to look up, to seek the orientation you've always been there? The truth is that when we are in the midst of a process of transformation, it is normal to feel aimlessly. But that does not mean that we are alone. The universe always gives us signs, always shows us the way, but it is up to us to perceive and interpret these messages. Carl Jung talked a lot about the soul transformation process and how painful it can be. He compared this process to a journey where we are obliged to abandon parts of ourselves that no longer serve us. Think of the butterfly. Before she can fly, she goes through a complete process of deconstruction. Inside the cocoon, the caterpillar literally dissolves, becoming a substance shapeless until little by little rebuilds into something completely different. What seemed an end was, in fact, the beginning of something bigger. But most interesting is that if someone tries to help her get out of the cocoon ahead of time, if someone breaks this shell for her, her wings will not develop correctly. She will never be strong enough to fly. Now think about your life. Is the moment of crisis you are going through now, isn't that exactly a cocoon, a process necessary for you to strengthen yourself before you take off? Because every transformation requires a period of discomfort. It is as if the universe is shaping you, preparing you for something bigger. But for this to happen, you need to go through the process. You need to accept that there are times when the best thing you can do is simply allow this transformation to happen. Another great symbol of transformation in nature is snake. To grow, she needs to change skin, and this process is not easy. During this phase, the snake is extremely vulnerable. Her vision is blurred, her senses are confused, and she needs to isolate herself because any threat can be fatal. But this isolation is not a punishment. It is necessary so that it can emerge stronger, renewed, ready to continue its journey. Now think about your own life. Have you ever felt that way? Have you been through moments where everything seemed uncertain, where you couldn't clearly see the way ahead? And is it, instead of seeing this as negative, can you face this period as a moment of renewal? Many times we resist these changes because we are afraid of the unknown. But the truth is that everything in nature goes through cycles of renewal. Trees lose their leaves in the fall so that they can be reborn in spring. The ocean is in constant motion, renewing itself with every wave that breaks in the sand. The whole universe is in transformation, so why do we resist so much to change? Jung said that suffering does not come from the change in itself, but from our resistance to it. And that makes a lot of sense. Imagine that you are holding a rope with all your strength. The rope is hurting you, burning your hands, but you don't want to release it because you are afraid of what can happen if you do that. Now imagine that this rope represents something in your life, a relationship that no longer makes sense, a job that no longer fills you, a belief that limits you. What if the simple act of releasing this rope brought the relief you are looking for so much? The problem is that many of us have been taught to believe that we should hold everything hard, that we must have control over everything. But the truth is that life doesn't work like that. The flow of the universe is much smarter than our desire for control, and often what seems like a loss can be our greatest liberation. Now think of a fruit tree. When the fruits mature, they fall naturally. The tree does not need to force them to stay there. It simply allows the cycle to follow its course. But imagine if, for some reason, this tree tried to hold the fruits with all its strength. They would rot on branches, preventing the birth of new fruits. This does not happen in nature because nature trusts the process. What if we did the same? If you feel that your life is undergoing radical changes now, try to look at these changes in another way. Instead of seeing this as a punishment, try to see as a renewal. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Ask, what is this situation trying to teach me? Because the truth is that everything that happens in our life has a purpose. Each challenge, every loss, each crisis has something to teach us. And the faster we learn the lesson, the faster we can get out of suffering. But for that, you must be willing to see beyond the surface. We need to give up control and trust that the universe knows what it is doing. And if that seems difficult, think of the times when you tried to force something that clearly wasn't supposed to happen. Think of the times when you insisted on something that later realized it was not the best for you. Had it entrusted to the flow of life, the process would not have been lighter. The universe is always giving us signs. Sometimes he whispers, other times he screams. And when we ignore subtle signs, we are forced to learn in the hard way. But it doesn't have to be so. If you learn to perceive signs before they become crises, you can flow with changes instead of fighting them. Now think of a river. Rio water never fights against the current. It simply flows. And it is this fluidity that allows the river to reach its destination. If the water resisted, if stagnant, it would become a swamp, lifeless, without movement. And this also happens to people. When we resist the changes, we get stuck. We feel stagnant, without energy, without motivation. But when we accept that life is in constant transformation, everything becomes lighter. So now, I want you to reflect. Is there anything in your life that you are holding on for fear of releasing? Is there any change you feel that you need to happen, but you have resisted? Do you feel that the universe has been trying to guide you to a new path, but are you afraid to follow? If you feel that this message is resonating with you, write in the comments, "I trust the process." I want you to leave this phrase in the comments as a commitment to yourself, as a sign that you are ready to accept this transformation. Share your experiences, your challenges, because it can help other people who are going through the same situation. If you got here, it means that somehow this message resonated inside you. Maybe you are going through this moment of transformation and feel that everything around you is changing without warning. Perhaps you are trying to understand why certain cycles are repeated, why some people leave your life without explanation, or why some doors that seemed open now are closed. And I want you to know that this is not a coincidence. The universe is communicating with you, but the question is, are you listening? The first step to dealing with this moment of trial is to stop resisting. I know this idea may seem scary at first. After all, we were conditioned to want to control everything around us. But the truth is that the more you resist, the more painful the process becomes. Resistance creates tension, and this tension makes each small obstacle look even greater than it really is. So instead of fighting what is happening, try accepting. This does not mean to conform to pain, but to understand that there is a greater purpose behind it. Now stop a moment and take a deep breath. Close your eyes for a few seconds and ask yourself, what is this situation trying to teach me? Instead of asking yourself, why is this happening to me? Ask, what is this experience trying to show me? Do you notice the difference? When you change the question, you change your perspective. And when you change your perspective, you make room for new answers to arise. Carl Jung taught us that the unconscious manifests itself through symbols, patterns, and signs. This means that the universe is always trying to communicate with you, but this communication is not always obvious. Often, he uses subtle forms such as synchronization, seemingly random coincidences, or even messages that repeatedly appear in his life. Have you noticed that when you are going through a difficult time, certain phrases seem to be repeated around you? Or that when are you thinking of something important, comes an unexpected answer through a book, a song, or even a random conversation? This is not a chance. They are signs. And when you start paying attention to these signs, everything changes. So the first thing I want you to do now is to become an observer of your own life. Start to notice the standards. Note the signs that the universe is sending to you. Write down your dreams, your intuitions, the thoughts that come out of nowhere. Many times, the answer you are looking for is already within you, but your mind is so full of noise that you can't hear. Another essential practice is reflective writing. Take a notebook or paper and write about what is happening in your life now. Ask yourself, what do I need to learn from this moment? Write down everything, without judgments, without filters. Just let the words flow. This will help you organize your thoughts and see patterns that you may not have noticed. Also, start paying attention to the cycles of your life. What are the challenges that are repeated? Do you always attract the same kind of relationship? Do you always face the same financial problems? Always feel the same way in the face of certain situations? If so, it means that there is an unconscious pattern that still needs to be transformed. The universe will continue to test you until you learn the lesson. And here comes one of the most powerful tools you can use in this process: meditation and internal silence. I know many people believe that meditating is complicated or requiring years of practice, but it doesn't have to be so. Meditating can simply be sitting in a quiet place, close your eyes, and focus on your breath for a few minutes. When you do this, your mind begins to slow down, and in this space of silence, answers can arise. If you feel you are lost and do not know what the next step is, try this exercise. You feel comfortably, take a deep breath, and ask yourself in silence, what do I need to know right now? Just get present and note if any answer arises. It can be a thought, an image, a sensation. The important thing is to trust what comes. Another fundamental practice to deal with this moment is to learn to let go of what no longer makes sense. Often we cling to people, situations, or beliefs only for fear of the unknown. But remember, everything that the universe is trying to take from your life is because it's no longer part of your way. And the more you insist on holding, the more difficult this transition will be. If there is something or someone in your life that is clearly no longer in tune with who you are becoming, perhaps it is time to allow this energy to follow your course. This does not mean that you need to cut people in your life abruptly or make radical decisions overnight, but it means you need to be open to new possibilities. Jung said that real growth happens when we have the courage to look inside and recognize what we really want, without the illusions of the ego. This may mean goodbye to relationships that no longer make sense, abandon beliefs that limit your potential, or even completely change the direction of your life. But to do that, you need to trust. And the best way to develop this confidence is through gratitude. I know it may seem contradictory to talk about gratitude at a time of difficulty, but try it. Every day when you wake up, ask yourself, what is positive in this situation? Even if it seems impossible at first, try to find something, even if it is small. It can be a new perspective that has emerged, a learning, a growth opportunity. When you change the focus of the problem to gratitude, your energy changes. And when your energy changes, your reality also begins to change. Another powerful practice that you can start applying today is visualization. Close your eyes and imagine yourself overcoming this difficult time. Imagine yourself stronger, more confident, living the life you really want. Feel this reality as if it were already happening. This is not just a mental exercise, but a process that reprograms your subconscious to attract the changes you want. And finally, remember, you are not alone. Many people go through this process of transformation. This is part of every human being. And if you have gotten here, if this message is resonating inside you, it means that you're ready to take the next step. But this step can only be taken by you. The universe can guide you, but the choice will always be yours. Now, I want you to reflect on all this and share your experience. Have you ever been through a moment when, after much fight, did you realize that it was best to release and trust? There is something in your life now that you feel you need to release, but didn't you have the courage yet? Write in the comments, I choose to trust the process. Leave this phrase as a signal to yourself that you are ready to accept this transformation. If you have gotten here, it means that somehow this message is resonating inside you. Perhaps you are feeling that your life is going through a storm, where everything seems out of control, where each day has a new challenge, and where the answers you seem so far seem. And I want you to know that even if it seems impossible now, this moment can be exactly what you needed to turn into your best version. The moments of greatest pain of your life can be the most transformative. I know this can be difficult to accept when we are in the middle of chaos. When everything seems to be crumbling, it is natural to ask, why is this happening to me? But that is not the right question. The question that can really change everything is, what can I learn from it? Because the truth is that the universe never takes something out of you without the intention of putting something better in place. Have you noticed that after the most difficult periods of your life, you were never the same? Perhaps a relationship ended and at that moment seemed the end of the world. But after a while, you realized that it was necessary to make room for something better, to teach you something about yourself, to make you grow. You may have lost a job, and at that moment fear has taken over. But then a new opportunity appeared, an opportunity that led you to a much more aligned path you really are with. The universe always works in our favor, but we can't always see it the moment things happen. Sometimes we look at what was lost, and we can't see what's coming. But if you stop to think, you will realize that all the great changes of your life happened after times of crisis. It was at the moment that everything seemed to be against you, that something inside you strengthened. It was in pain that you discovered strength that you didn't even know you had. And if you still can't see it, I want you to think of a seed. Before becoming a tree, it needs to be buried in the darkness of the earth. There, in silence and solitude, she begins to germinate. But to grow, she needs to break. Its peel breaks, its roots spread across the ground, and everything inside it changes. For those looking out, it looks like a violent process, a total collapse. But in fact, this is the beginning of its transformation. Now think about your life. This moment you're going through now may be just that, a necessary breakage phase for something new to arise. The problem is that we often cling to what it no longer serves. We are afraid to let go, to give up, because the stranger scares us. But if the seed resisted to its transformation, it would never become a tree. If the butterfly resisted its cocoon, it would never fly. And if you resist what the universe is trying to teach you now, you can end up trapped in a pain cycle that repeats indefinitely. Carl Jung said that what we deny controls us, and what we accept transforms us. That is, as long as you deny your transformation, while you insist on holding what should have already been left behind, you will continue to feel this pain. But the moment you accept, the moment you understand that this difficult phase is part of your growth, it all starts to change. Because pain exists only when there is resistance. Think about it. Everything that is happening is now preparing you for something bigger. You may not see that yet, but the universe knows what you are doing. He is shaping you, strengthening you, guiding you to a new path. But to move on, you need to trust. You need to stop fighting the change and allow it to happen. And I know that trusting the process is not always easy. The fear of the unknown can be paralyzing. But what do you prefer? Getting stuck in pain, holding something that is no longer yours, or opening for what's to come? Because the truth is that you have survived 100% of your worst days so far. You have had difficulties before and overcome. You already thought you couldn't, and yet you are here. This means that you are stronger than you think. This means that no matter how painful this moment, it will also pass. And when you pass, you will look back and understand why. You will realize that each loss, every cycle closure, each door that was closed was actually a redirect. The universe gets you nothing for no reason. If something came out of your life, it is because you have already fulfilled your role. If something is changing, it is because you are ready for something bigger. And the big question here is, are you willing to trust? You are willing to see this moment so with other eyes. Are you willing to allow this pain to transform you instead of destroying you? Because this choice only depends on you. Now, I want you to stop for a moment and think about everything we've talked about here. Is there anything in your life that you feel you need to let go, but haven't had the courage yet? Is there a change you feel that you are being called to make, but is fear preventing you? Is there a pain that you have not yet been able to turn into learning? If the answer is yes, write in the comments, "I accept my transformation." This phrase is not just a comment, it is a commitment to yourself. It is a sign for the universe that you are ready for this new phase, that you are willing to learn, grow, and become the best version of yourself. If you got here, if this message has somehow resonated inside you, then I want you to understand something very important. The universe is not punishing you. He is preparing you. I know that when you are in the middle of the storm, when everything seems to be out of control, when pain and uncertainty take over your life, it is difficult to see a purpose in it. But believe me, it exists. Every challenge you face, every moment of crisis you are going through, every door that closes, every person who goes away, all of this has a greater meaning than you can see now. What looks like absolute chaos today can be the key piece that will lead you to the greatest transformation of your life. Think about it. If everything was always easy, if nothing ever left the place, you would have no reason to change. You would remain exactly where you are, following the same standards, living the same reality, never discovering your true potential. But the universe knows who you really are. He knows what you are capable of. And when you realize that you are ready for something bigger, it begins to move the pieces. He challenges you. He pushes you out of your comfort zone. He forces you to see what you were ignoring. Maybe now it seems that everything is against you. But what if, in fact, all this was happening for you? To strengthen you, to teach you, to transform you? What if this difficult phase is exactly what you needed to wake up to your true purpose? Because the truth is that great transformations come after the biggest storms. No butterfly is born without first going through the darkness of the cocoon. No tree grows without first root in the dark, deep soil. And no soul expands without first crossing the denser night. Carl Jung said that what we need to learn always appears disguised as a problem. This means that the difficult times you face now are not barriers. They are lessons, they are tests, they are opportunities for you to discover strength within you that you never imagined you had. Have you ever wondered how many times in the past did you face something that seemed impossible to overcome? How many times have you thought you couldn't, but did you find a way? How many times has life surprised you, bringing something much better than you could have planned? So why would it be different now? The universe has never left you before, and it won't leave you now. But he needs you to trust. He needs you to stop fighting what is happening and start seeing opportunities within this crisis. He needs you to stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this going on with me? Because this simple change of perspective can completely transform your reality. If you look at the challenges as enemies, they will seem unsurpassed. But if you look at them as teachers, as allies in their growth, then each obstacle will become a step for something bigger. Life is not against you. Life wants to see you grow. But for that, you need to be willing to trust. You need to be willing to cross this phase, knowing that on the other side, something amazing awaits you. Now I want you to imagine a moment in the future, a few months or maybe years ahead. Imagine yourself looking back at this moment you are living now. Imagine yourself stronger, wiser, more conscious. Imagine yourself grateful for everything that happened, because that's exactly what has taken you to where you are now. Because it was this phase, this pain, this challenge that shaped you, which taught you, that prepared you for what was coming. You can feel this future version of yourself telling you it was hard, but it was worth it. Now I understand why everything happened that way. You don't have to understand everything now. You just need to trust that one day in the future will all make sense. And when this day comes, you will look back and realize that this phase was your greatest gift. That this moment that today looks like a weight, in the it was its liberation. Because nothing happens by chance. Nothing is wasted. All the pain you feel is now building something inside you. Something that soon you will notice. So if now the pain is intense, if doubts are consuming you, if you feel you don't know where to go, I want you to remember something very important. This is not the end. This is the beginning. The darkness you feel now is not a dead-end hole. It is the space where your new version is being formed, and when you finally understand this, when you finally see the purpose of this phase, you will never look at the challenges the same way. Now I want you to do something for you. I want you to write in the comments, I trust the process. Say this as a commitment to yourself, as a sign to the universe that you are ready for this transformation. Leave this phrase in the comments as a reminder that you choose to trust, that you choose to see this phase with new eyes. If you got here, I want to congratulate you. This means that you are committed to your growth, that you are willing to see this phase with other eyes, and that you are ready to rely on the process. Not everyone comes to the end, but you arrived, and it already says a lot about you. So if this message made sense to you, leave your like now. This helps this video reach more people who also need to hear this message. And more importantly, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because here we are always bringing deep content about spirituality, self-knowledge, and the signs of the universe. And now, I want to know about you. Comment down here, I'm ready for my transformation. Write this as a commitment to yourself, as a sign that you choose to trust, evolve, and make room for the new. And if you want to continue this journey and understand even more about the signs that the universe sends you, watch now the next video that is appearing on your screen. It can be exactly what you need to hear right now. So don't stop here. Continue your transformation and see you in the next video.